His opponent Pavel is not, despite being the current world champion, did not qualify for the world championships, so that is a big disappointment, and I'm sure he will want to walk away from this tournament with a victory.
He will indeed, and if he wins this one, he'll be up against Alliance, potentially up against Orange, the person who knocked him out and stops him from getting through to the world championships in January, so that could be a very juicy face-off indeed.
Alright, game one of the second and final series of the day, then Evolution versus Planet Odd. Winner moves on to face Alliance, loser will be heading home.
And to get things going for both of these players, there's some acceptable options that you could settle for, or you could go for some slightly more impressive cards. So for example, for Surrender, I would not be surprised to see maybe two Swashbucklers, definitely one being thrown away here, because it's not really what you're looking for in this mirror. Against stuff like Voidwalker or Malkazar's Imp, it's pretty weak, and so instead you're looking for Backstab, Keleseth, SI7 Agent, maybe now that you're on the coin, the Edwin as well. But he does end up keeping one here, which I find fairly surprising.
I kind of like keeping one just as a backup plan, let's say, in case you draw into your Bone Mares and your Scalebanes, for example.
Yep.
You end up doing a Sidonia and just having a massive full heavy hand. So I understand it, but now he's drawn the Firefly. Of course, he can just throw a Firefly in here if he would like. Depends if you want to combine it with a Backstab. I mean, something I've seen quite a lot is that you will Backstab a Voidwalker early so that they can't get the value, and you might be able to get the Backstab later. You won't be able to get the Backstab later.
I think if he goes for something like Firefly and then Hero Power on turn 2, though, he very possibly won't ever need to put the Backstab onto the Voidwalker. He can instead put in both charges of the weapon and the Firefly, and then Backstab something a bit bigger like a Captain or a Tar Creeper a little bit later on down the line. But again, the way that Pavel can kind of mess up the maths here from Surrender is the Corsair. If he can snipe off the second charge of the weapon and Surrender has to spend another 2 mana to get down the dagger, that can really slow down his early turns.
It really is surprising how influential the dagger is and how important it is to know when to be hitting him with the dagger and when not to be hitting him with the dagger. It can really change your matchup, but the Backstab does come out. And I have a little grin on my face, I'm not going to lie, because at least now I don't feel like a massive idiot.
No, I mean, I can totally see the reasoning for it. I would not have backstabbed there, but I think given your hand is actually very high value already in 2 Scalebanes, playing very heavily for tempo to make sure that you don't fall behind does actually make a good amount of sense here now that I look at it. You don't need to get the value out of saving the backstab, you can just go for it right now to stay ahead.
Unfortunately for Surrender, there is going to be no Keleseth in Pavel's hand, so Surrender will be very pleased about that, and instead it's just going to be a Voidwalker that comes onto the board as well. So to answer that for Surrender, I guess he hasn't really got much. He's going to be hoping for something quite significant off the draw. Of course, he could just go for the normal turn 2 of Dagger, could go for Swashbuckler and Flame Elemental if he wants.
A lot of options here from both players. Do you reckon Pavel just goes with the Voidwalker? He kind of wants to get dumped in his hand right away.
I mean, there is some consideration to tapping in that point, but I think you've just seen the aggressive line from your opponent of a Backstab, and you're worried what's going to be following, so you need to be competing with the board, which is why Pavel does then go for the Voidwalker. Another Firefly being picked up means that Surrender can flood this board ever so slightly, if he would like.
Yeah, I think I can actually respect that. Then on the following turn you have the option of 1-drop and Dagger, or just, I don't know, double 1-drop. Maybe if you pick up a Keleseth, you can go for that as well. Just playing his stuff as quickly as he can so that he can give himself the highest chance possible of having something on board to go coin Scalebane into Scalebane. Feels pretty nice to me indeed, as he picks up a Tar Creeper as well. Very nice pickup.
But now we're in that position where you said you would have quite liked a Backstab here. Imagine if you did have a Backstab and you could take out that Captain. But unfortunately for Surrender, doesn't have it. Of course, having the coin is pretty important. The fact that he's got 2 Scalebanes in his hand already, it would be quite nice to get one of those out on turn 4. At least the Tar Creeper does absorb some damage here. Yeah,
it kind of trades pretty nicely against the whole board actually, and given that on turn 4 there's not too many combat tricks that can come down with things like Dreadlord dealing 1 extra damage or Bone Mare or Scalebane buffing everything up. So kind of what you see is very likely what you get, and so I would expect to see the Tar Creeper come down here for Surrender because it protects his board very nicely, and even if he can't go coin Scalebane into Scalebane with a buff on both turns, just getting a 5/5 on the next turn is far from the worst play.
Surrender's able to make that play. No Crystal Weaver in the deck from Evolution either, so he knows there's not going to be a demon that's going to be buffed up onto the board. So he can go for a more defensive line, and it may even be a possibility of just passing here for Pavel. I guess you get the value out of patches first, regardless of what you're going to do, and then you consider whether you want to be training your captain in.
And so here for Pavel, also an interesting point is he goes for double fire or fire 5 flame elemental rather than the Malkazar's imp, because I guess he's just too afraid of some kind of backstab SI7 agent coin Vilespine maybe taking that out, because he really wants to get that in combination with the Doomguard. So it has the benefit of being able to go the Dreadlord on 5 into Malkazar's imp Doomguard on 6, but that's kind of concreting in your line of play. There's not much flexibility now with what Pavel's trying to do.
So Surrender has been saving this coin for quite a while, and I imagine with his opening hand he was probably thinking, right, I think I'm going to be using this for a Scalebane, but now with Bone Mare just creeping in and making an appearance, that might change your play ever so slightly, especially because you've still got patches to pull as well, you've still got a dagger, and you can make some decent trades in this position.
It's just about whether or not he thinks there will be something on board on turn 6 to go for coin into Bone Mare, and I think he's actually pretty well realised that's unlikely to happen, because the last turn from Pavel was tap double Firefly. The hand of Pavel is probably quite heavy, which means there's a good chance there's a Doomguard in there, so it could just easily take out these dragons in the next few turns, which means Bone Mare wouldn't be able to land a hit. So I do really like going for the coin on this turn instead for Surrender.
Is the hand of Pavel a bit like hand of Maradona, the hand of God? Just imagine.
Except it just slaps your hopes and dreams down.
So Surrender he is able to keep something alive at least. And at least he can trade in as well with this Despicable Dreadlord. But that captain, the decision of Pavel previously, keeping the captain alive, not trading it into the Tar Creeper, is now showing its value by the fact that it's still on the board. It's still contesting you. Those little things that some people don't consider, but a world champion, you know, he thinks everything. Every micro decision
in his mind, he is thinking about literally everything.
Literally.
What you had for breakfast this morning,
he knows.
He's thinking about that.
He was there.
You may not know it. Look in your cornflakes. It's Pavel.
So Pavel has just gained such control on this board, but Vilespine is a pretty good pickup for Surrender here. Works in conjunction with his Swashbuckler. Does pull out, of course, patches as well.
Ooh. That's a little bit more interesting, actually. Karakazam fills out the mana perfectly. It's more stats that you're putting on board, obviously, than the Vilespine. And the Vilespine doesn't hit anything that good at the moment. And with Bone Mare coming down next turn, you kind of want to save that to hit a buffed up minion from the Bone Mare.
This game's looking like it's slowly getting away from Surrender, though.
Yeah.
The fact that if he does go for something as defensive as, well, if he doesn't go for the Vilespine, and he leaves, of course, the Malkazar's Imp on the board, then this Doomguard's going to get even more value. And that's scary.
I think he had to go for this line of play because it's more reasonable to assume that a Bone Mare is there, I guess, than a... Actually, it's kind of even to go either way, but I suppose the Vilespine is better against either minion if it comes down here, so you want to save it back and just go for the stat development here. But we can see this is going to be completely devastating for Surrender. It could be, what, double 1-drop into Doomguard to draw another 2 cards, get another Charger, just ridiculous tempo, ridiculous card draw, and he can clear off the vast majority of the board at the same time.
I suppose if he goes double 1-drop, yeah, he gets the Flame Elemental in his hand, and then... Yeah, this would be nice for Pavel. Which 1-drop do you want to get rid of, though? Do you want to get rid of your Akros Veteran? I guess that's going to give you the most value.
Yeah, I think I like getting rid of the Firefly, the Flame Elemental. The 1 mana 1/2 is pretty rubbish, it turns out. You wouldn't even play it with Taunt.
I don't know about you. Speak for yourself, mate.
Ready for action.
Karakazam, though, new card, PogChamp. Look at this board now from Pavel, though, and how do you answer this if you're Surrender? At least he does have 1 minion on the board, so at least Bone Mare is going to be able to do something, but something also stands for a whole lot of nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, something, I mean, I'm trying to think what cards from Swashbuckler could turn this around. If we were playing with Catacombs cards, Cataclysm would be pretty nice, but outside of that, I'm not sure if there's anything for that mana cost that will get the job done.
Twisting Nether?
Can you even survive a turn? Just about, I guess.
Just about.
Yeah.
That's not going to help anybody. So Valspine, you can take out the 5-4. You're still leaving 13 power on the board. I think that's your best option at this point.
Yeah. Oh man, this was such a tough turn for Surrender. Oh, such a tough game, I should say, for Surrender. In the early turns, maybe he saved the coin a little bit too long, because in his line of play of going for coin Scalebane into Scalebane, it did leave him very vulnerable to Doom Guards, because the stat line of the trades works out so perfectly for the Zoo. And that's one of the main reasons why it's not as good in this matchup, where it's a lot better against some of these slower decks like Priest Druid and Taunt Warrior. I mean, I guess it's not over yet, but with the pickup of Blood Reaver Gul'dan as well, getting out 2 Doom Guards is still just such an uphill battle for Surrender.
At least he's got a turn 8 of Flame Elemental into Bone Mare, which is some sort of defensive option, but you're completely right. As soon as this gets to turn 10, it might just be curtains for Surrender at this point. Quite rightly, we heard earlier, we haven't really seen much Gul'dan use during Zoo, because either it's been discarded or it's just not got to the point where he's actually made a difference. Potentially we might see it make a difference here, but to be honest, the game's pretty much over anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's not well, yeah, you don't really put it in for this matchup, and it can almost be a trap in these kind of matchups, because when you're thinking, oh, can I go for a Doom Guard here? I'll end up discarding Blood Reaver Gul'dan, because very often, if you do get to turn 10 and throw down the Blood Reaver Gul'dan, you win on the spot every time. It's one of the highest win rate cards when played in Zoo, because when you do play it, you win on the spot usually. But you know, very often, if you just go with the Doom Guard anyway and don't keep it in your hand, you can just win, but through the sheer tempo of playing out those cards. So it's a difficult card to play with perfectly, but for this situation in Pavel, it's one of the best cards that you could have coming into the next couple turns.
I hope you do appreciate I didn't interrupt you as Admirable Akbar at that point when you said
just
it's a trap. Instead, I just made a really silly face.
Very distracting.
And maybe put you off your sentence, but at least we're getting there. We're halfway there, where I'm not interrupting you too much, and instead just annoying you.
Instead just going off camera.
Unfortunately, having to block this imp on the board, which is just going to be doing... Well, okay, it does a job, right? You're putting a big minion on the board that your opponent is at least having to deal with.
Well, they kind of have to deal with it. At the same time, they can just play double Chain Gang, throw everything to face, and then any subsequent minion that Surrender plays pretty much just kills him. I guess maybe you'd kill off Valspine because it can be Shadow Stepped, but even then, yeah, I like just going full face, because next turn the Blood Reaver comes down, you're getting double Doom Guard, double Despicable Dreadlord, Malkazar's Imps. It is over at this point.
Of course, Surrender can bounce back the Valspine, but then he's taking extra damage when he plays it. He could bounce back the Imp and then play a Bone Mare, and then at least that puts up somewhat of a wall.
I like the optimism, Dan.
I mean, I try my hardest. Little old Surrender. This could potentially be the last game of the tournament if Planet Odd weren't to win this whole series and he was to lose here. And his record hasn't been the best, if I'm honest. He hasn't had the most fortunate of games. So you trade him with the Imp, trade him with the Valspine, bounce back the Imp, play the Bone Mare onto the Valspine. And then you're just dead. But you're not dead on board. As far as he's concerned.
He's giving it a good shot. But I think from this game, the overall thing from Surrender is I liked the vast majority of his early turns. I just don't think he was optimistic enough in his mulligan. If he'd gone more heavily for cards like Keleseth, Edwin, Backstab, SI7 Agent, Captain, some cards like that to really run away with the early game, then possibly he could have seen himself pulling this back and running away in the early stages of the game. But when you're just trading card for card against Zoo, their individual cards are just higher value. Despicable Dreadlord is kind of just better than the Scalebane. Doomguard is just better when they're just thrown down on their own. You need to get some combo effects with Rogue, and it just wasn't there for Surrender.
Well, Falcone will be happy. Eventually, Gul'dan has made a difference in a Zoo matchup, and Surrender, unfortunately, has to just take a seat and hope that his teammates Hoyt and Zixo can bring this one back. Completely different from the last time we saw these two teams go up against each other. It was Surrender who was able to get those 2 victories, and then it was his teammates who, in theory, let him down. So, a complete flip of the coin, and now Zixo is going to be taking the seat. it's been an interesting tournament for Zixo. He's had a lot of interesting comments to say about other teams, other players, about himself, to be honest. A very vocal player, knows exactly what he wants in a game of Hearthstone and what he doesn't want, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's had some very good games, I would say, with his Quest Warrior in particular. It's a delight to see him play it. But he's had what a lot of players would call some fumbles along the way. Some just situations where he lets the he doesn't have quite enough time to think through every permutation, because I almost feel like he thinks too much for his own good. He's trying to figure out through every single possible line of play and permutation what could be the best possible line of play. And it means that in his Quest Mage game, a couple of his Quest Warrior games, he's just run out of time.
So Old Boy was able to defeat this Quest Warrior with the Zoo in their previous matchup, but Zixo and Planet Odd feel that this is their best chance of actually stopping this Zoo from doing what it does best, sweeping aside teams with comfort. Worth noting, I don't know if we've actually mentioned the fact that Zixo dyed his hair for his team colours. Has that been brought up yet?
I don't know if it has. I usually just assume he lost the bet somewhere along the way and had to dye his hair.
Yeah, but I didn't even notice. It was Planet Odd's team colours there. The yellow and... What colour is that? Like a lightish green?
Like a forest green?
Aqua. That's like a light blue, isn't it?
It's not really even close to the same colour, one might say.
Turquoise.
Turquoise. I'd say that's in the same ballpark.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Alright, well, we'll see if Zixo is in the same ballpark for this game as Pavel. I wouldn't want to go to that ballpark, personally.
Don't know what a ballpark is, actually.
No, I mean, I guess it's like where children play ball games.
In a park?
In a park. Like football, basketball, dodgeball, and
tennis.
Pavel will be hoping to dodge Zixo's Quest Warrior here and hope he can get a 2-0 lead for Evolution and have them even closer to edging towards the top 4 in this competition. Finds a Flame Imp to start with, Malkazar's Imp as well. Dreadlord, I imagine, is going to be tossed aside. So, have we come to the conclusion of, are we keeping the quest for Zixo in this matchup?
I think the thing is, for Zixo, because Blood Reaver Gul'dan is in the deck, just the very threat of it potentially coming down later on down the line means you have to keep it, because if it does come down, you're just not really winning that game. Even with the quest completed, the Sulfuras equipped, it's still difficult. We saw against X-Hope, I believe it was, when Planet Odd went up against OM the other day. It was a very, very, very close game with X-Hope firing off that hero power to the face every single turn, stealing a great amount of health and almost taking the game. But Zixo, because he's got the quest, will have every eventuality covered. And he's even got a very good starting hand outside of that. The N'Zoth's First Mate is a great way to take out some of the aggression from Pavel in Planet Odd's signature twist on Quest Warrior.
Finally, as well. I mean, the past few games he's played with this Quest Warrior, the N'Zoth's First Mate hasn't been drawn. Instead, he's been drawing the patches early on. I remember his opponent, I think it was X-Hope, potentially, who played Galaka Crawler early, despite knowing that N'Zoth's First Mate and patches are in the deck, and that was when Zixo threw his hands off, saying, "What are you doing? You know I have this card in my deck. Why aren't you playing around it?" But Pavel now, of course, relatively easy decision. Yeah, I was going to say evil decision, but I guess every decision Pavel makes is a little bit evil.
I mean, you play a card like Flame Imp, it's fairly evil, I would say.
It's pretty evil. But at least Zixo does have an answer for it as well. The N'Zoth's First Mate is going to do so much work here. Imagine if that wasn't in his hand. Imagine if he was just waiting until he got to turn 5, for example, for a Direhorn hatchling. He could go very southward, and maybe, just maybe, Pavel had some form of read on that.
I think he very possibly might have done. It's really interesting to see Pavel play, because in the mid stages of the game, like turns 3 through 6, he just storms through every single turn, throws down the best possible card, bam, 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 bam. But on the first turn, he seems to always take the full 75 seconds, thinking about every possible starting hand his opponent could have, taking the time to figure out, okay, if he plays this, what does that mean he has in hand? And he's thinking, if he does have N'Zoth's First Mate, I don't want him to be able to go patches and hook into my Flame Imp.
And again, he's not putting the most power possible on the board here. Instead, he's putting one of those flame elementals on the board just to be a little bit of a nuisance in case there is any extra removal from his opponent as well. Any easy way of clearing him up? For example, a Ravaging Ghoul that's now in the hand of Zixo here. It would have been great if there was 2 Flame Imps on the board and you get a Ravaging Ghoul and you're going to be feeling in a really good spot.
And here's Zixo going for the play that's most aggressively clearing the board here. Doesn't want any kind of snowball effects to come down here, maybe with something like a South Sea Captain, getting some preferential trades. Could obviously have just taken out the Flame Imp and gone for the Stonehill Defender. Could have even gone for Sleep with the Fishes, but this is the play I like most of all. It clears off the board, gets a powerful minion on board, and you're still potentially getting every single taunt played whilst you have the quest.
I guess the only awkward thing is he's still not played that quest, and now he's using some of his minions that are going to be ticking up that quest counter, and he's not going to be getting anything from them. That's the only downside of having to play N'Zoth's first mate early on. You're not able to get it out nice and early. So I don't know. I guess Zixo's not going to mind too much when he can follow up next turn with Acolyte of Pain and the quest. Losing Stonehill to the quest isn't too bad because you pick up another taunt from it anyway.
Yeah, it's far from the worst. And again, for Zixo, for the majority of the game, he doesn't care about having the quest completed at all. It's basically just because there's the potential for Gul'dan at some point later on down the line that he is forced into taking the quest. So come turns, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, he will potentially start to complete the quest and close out the game.
Second Rate Bruiser is going to get quite a lot of value at this point as well. I think it's quite fortunate that Zixo isn't playing the dirty route, because that hand of Pavel looks very scary. You don't want to be drawing either Doomguard or Despicable Dreadlord.
Yeah, I think this was perfectly navigated by Zixo. Just look how far ahead he is against a zoo. If you're trading... If the warrior is trading preferentially, taking value trades with their minions without even having to use their removal spells like Execute, Sleep with the Fishes, you're just in such a bad situation, because they will then have the follow-up of cards like Direhorn Hatchling, the Ali Armorsmith, Drake Curator, and then you really start falling behind.
And if I remember correctly, the last time we saw Pavel play with a zoo against a Quest Warrior, he survived a brawl with a Doomguard and then top-decked a Doomguard to win the game, did he not?
I seem to remember that as well.
It was either, it was definitely either Quest Warrior or N'Zoth Warrior, yeah. I can't remember which, but now for Zixo, I guess he could use one of these Sleep with the Fishes just to clear the board once again, if he would like, follow up maybe with an Acolyte of Pain. Oh, he's going to go for a Dirty Rat. Does he? Wow. Zixo has won so many Dirty Rat 50-50s this tournament. Right from the get-go, the first day, there was a 50-50 between a Sea Giant and something really poo. And of course, he pulled the poo thing.
Of course he did. As Pavel potentially giving a read there to Zixo as he furrows his brow, wondering if something is funny with what Zixo is going, as that has quickly become Pavel's catchphrase on this trip to China.
And what a horrible turn now for Pavel as well. And this is the problem with Gul'dan, is that it so often can get stuck in your hand, and then you are just going to end up throwing it away anyway because of the likes of Doomguard, the likes of Soulfire. If you're really playing a risky game, you could go for Soulfire first and then play the Doomguard, but I don't like it.
I think what Pavel is saying here, probably correctly so, is I actually really want to protect both of these cards, so I can't quite go for Doomguard here, because if there is something like an Execute, I'm probably just losing this game. In the end, he does go for the Soulfire with the Imp, discarding... Ooh. Blood Reaver Gul'dan is gone. I'm not even sure if that was necessarily better or worse for Pavel. He has stronger follow-up. And if the Imp isn't cleared off, this is going to be a very strong turn. But that eventuality is just gone now.
Yeah, but I guess, if you're getting rid of one of your Doomguards, then when you play Gul'dan, you're not going to be summoning a Doomguard anyway. And really, Pavel needs to start providing the beatdown onto Zixo, because otherwise, this is going to be going very badly, very quickly. Zixo can answer this Dreadlord immediately if you would like, just with the Dirty Rat on board. Follow up with an Ali Armorsmith, potentially.
Yeah, I think I like that play. He's looking at some kind of Sleep with the Fishes stuff, and, he does have two of them in hand, and he does want to kill off the Malchezaar's Imp. Maybe he can get the read that that's the Doomguard, but yeah, I think this is way better, because as soon as a Whirlwind effect is picked up, like Blood Razor or the second Ravaging Ghoul, or even this Drake that's in hand later on down the line, the Sleep with the Fishes are going to be the absolute MVPs.
So does Pavel tap here? The answer is no, clearly. And I respect that a lot, because what if you tapped into another Doomguard, for example? Just getting the one card drawn from Malchezaar's Imp is perfect.
Yeah, it's kind of doing the same thing anyway, because if you tap, then discard a card and draw another one, it's kind of the same as drawing one, but you've just discarded another card from your deck, and without any kind of benefit for cards that you've discarded in this deck, unless you actually discard them with the Malchezaar's Imp, it's not really worth it.
All the armor gain for Zixo at this point without the Armor Smith coming off the top. But there is still the potential to draw more cards here for Pavel. And the mana curve works out actually perfectly here, so he doesn't even have to discard anything. Councilman to start off, followed by the Chain Gang to buff it up, and then a Soulfire.
It's pretty good. It's still pretty good, but for Zixo, as soon as he finds a Whirlwind effect, he's back in the game. He doesn't even need that. Just going for the Drake on this turn, even if Pavel can take some nice trades in, trading up into an 8-drop, the Sleep with the Fishes will come down on the next turn and completely destroy the board.
So do you value just playing the mana here, or actually drawing a card from Soulfire? I guess just getting stuff on the board is too important.
Yeah, again, you know, you go for discarding stuff if it's a really rubbish card like a Flame Elemental or Patches, something like that you'd much rather just shuffle through to get to a better card. But the Chain Gang here and the Councilman are both pretty decent options to give yourself a nice wide board.
And Zixo has this perfect 2 turns of Primordial Drake here. Can then follow up with Sleep with the Fishes next turn, depending on what survives. I think he's going to be feeling fairly confident.
He's just wondering if it's worth going for Battle Rage here, I suppose. Drawing 2 cards is nice. You're pretty guaranteed to get at least 2 cards some point later on down the line. But if he can pick up a Blood Razor, that is incredibly powerful. Ghoul is very powerful, but I think he has correctly realized, as I said, he will be able to get the same amount of value, if not more, later on down the line.
Oh, and Bone Mare. That's... Oh, double Bone Mare.
Wow.
Okay, this gives Pavel a chance to actually still compete in this game, because Zixo is slowly running out of things. The Bone Mare...
It's true.
Can it put a minion out of range of Sleep with the Fishes, as well as killing off this Primordial Drake here?
So we can go for Bone Mare on the Councilman and then completely cleanly take out the Drake, leaving it at 4 health, or sorry, 3 health afterwards. And then you're still, everything's dying to Sleep with the Fishes, apart from the Bone Mare, obviously, which is a fairly big deal, because then the Bone Mare can come down on the Bone Mare and get yourself a very nice horse stack.
Yeah, I'm thinking... well, you're definitely Bone Maring here. There is no other option, clearly. But it's just on what? And I think Pavel will know that one of these cards is potentially a Sleep with the Fishes as well, so he does just go for the most obvious, easy trade. He can push some damage this turn. But Zixo is so high on health. After that aggressive start that he had with N'Zoth's first mate, he has been able to answer back Pavel. And eventually Pavel now getting something through, but more removal found now for Zixo. And just 13 health for Pavel.
Now this is, again, a tough turn for Zixo. I'm pretty sure you're going for the Sleep with the Fishes over the Brawl, but whether or not you go with the Battle Rage is the big question. He goes for it in the end, and is going to be pretty happy, because that is all of a sudden every card he needs in hand to complete the quest. Even getting another Drake is very nice.
The only downside to taking Drake means you can't equip Sulfurous at the same turn.
Good point.
But you're completely right. The amount of value you're getting from that damage, it's 8 health. It's really difficult for the Warlock to be able to battle through as well.
Yeah. You have to have a pretty strong reason to not go for a 5 or less drop to equip Sulfurous and get going. But the Dragon into Sleep with the Fishes on the same turn, destroying everything that Pavel can throw down, I believe is a good enough reason.
And I like Pavel holding back the Bone Mare here as well. Keleseth into Saronite Chain Gang is perfect for him, but unfortunately, Primordial Drake into Sleep with the Fishes does just clean up this whole board, and to be honest, Darok probably cleans up this game.
I think this is completely over at this point. The Blood Reaver Gul'dan is gone. The quest can, the Sulfurous can be equipped next turn, potentially just closing out the game on the spot, unless a minion can be found to put the Bone Mare on, which it is. But Pavel knows it's over. Zixo perfectly counters Pavel's incredibly potent Zoo.
But this is the position Evolution wanted to be in yesterday. They wanted to get that first victory, so now they can go back to the drawing board, have that advantage of saying, alright, we've got all these decks that none of you have seen in this tournament. What surprises do we have? What can we do to counter a Quest Warrior? So what we have seen from them, of course, we've seen the Rogue, we've seen the Shaman, we've seen the Warlock, and then yesterday we got a glimpse of their Mage, and we also got a little sneak peek at their Druid as well.
So looking at what they've got here, To be honest, I'm not sure. In the mage deck, it can have a good shot against warrior, because if you can just burn through them with spells, then their armor will not mean enough. But there's likely no pyroblast in the deck. There's some cards like polymorph and volcanic potion which might not be getting the work done in combination with ice barrier, so it's a fairly diluted deck, definitely not teched especially well to deal with this taunt warrior. And then outside of that, maybe they just go with the rogue, because it does have the ability to not only beat the warrior, but also take down whatever comes next from Planet Odd. But we've seen fairly consistently from Planet Odd, they do have a very good game plan with the quest warrior against the rogue.
So decisions then, and clearly this is a very important decision. The difference between top 4 and finishing 5th/6th in terms of prize money is, of course, very different, and it's your reputation on the line. Current world champion Frozen going to the world championships, they're going to want to perform well. And who's going to be taking the reins then? Is it going to be Frozen, or are we going to be seeing Old Boy? And we have been seeing a pattern emerge of, it usually goes Pavel into Frozen into Old Boy. Sometimes there has been a little bit mix up here and there, but certainly you do get those telltale signs from which player is going to be starting here. But I'm loving the fact that Evolution now find themselves in this position, because it's where they wanted to be. They can have these discussions, they can take that time.
Yeah. And even though they revealed 2 new decks yesterday, they're still ahead in terms of how many secrets they have left behind as Old Boy steps up to the plate. I mean, what we've seen from him most consistently, his victories have come from the zoo, but that is now out of the way, so he's going to have to bring something else to the table. Maybe a Murloc Paladin, if it's especially top-heavy to take down the warrior. He is, I believe, more proficient with these kind of... It's difficult because he says he wants to go with more control-y decks, but we saw in the Summer Championships he seemed to be stronger with the more tempo-aggressive decks.
When we spoke to him back, I think it was maybe day 2 or 3 of the group stages when he hadn't even played yet, and we were saying, hey old boy, come on, when are you going to give it a chance? And he was like, to be honest, I don't care if I don't get given a chance, because most of the decks I've been practicing are counter decks that you'll see when we're in a position where we have to use them. And because they were so far ahead in the group stages, they didn't really need to use Old Boy. Of course, he had that one game with one series with the Zoo where he was able to show his prowess. But now it's his time to shine. He is going to be bringing a deck that we've not seen yet. It is going to be the Paladin as well. So this is going to be an interesting one for Evolution. Is their strategy finally going to pay off? Or is Zixo and his Quest Warrior going to really thwart this plan?
I think if piloted correctly, as we do finally see it, is the Murloc Paladin, it can have a great shot against the Taunt Warrior. Once again, it's a matchup where Zixo has been consistently keeping the quest, which means you have less ability to counteract the early Murlocs, as Old Boy gets a pretty impressive hand of early Murlocs. But also in the later stages of the game, once they've exhausted all their removal on your Murlocs, you then follow up with cards like Curator, Tyrion, Bone Mare, Spikeridge Steed, Ken, Tarim. It's ridiculous how much late game power you have.
And we have seen Bloodrazor being able to make a big impact in these matchups against these aggressive decks, but Tidecooler picked up as well now for Old Boy. This is absolutely perfect. I mean, it may get to the point, if he finds a War Leader, that it comes to turn 4 for Zixo, and he's already facing down 16, 18 damage.
Yeah. So here for Old Boy, it's kind of counterintuitive with these Murloc hands, because when you see a very heavy hand with things like Tyrion and Scalebanes in there, you think, okay, he's going to be playing a slower, more value game. But in those situations, because they have so much value in hand already, they can afford to be a bit quicker with the Murlocs and not eke out every single point of value with the hero power. But this is kind of a middling hand. It doesn't have too much value in the later stages of the game, but Curator on its own might be able to carry him once it gets to the later stages. So I could see something like Coin Chum here, which wouldn't be too ridiculous, but he does hold it back, going with a much slower start.
Which I think was a very risky play, considering Zixo had kept one card, which he's hovering over now, by the way. That could have been a N'Zoth's first mate. If N'Zoth's first mate comes down here, the Tidecooler is removed off the board, and then suddenly your start isn't as good. But
true.
At least now he is rewarded for his patience. He can play Rockpool Hunter down. He then can save the coin back for Megasaur next turn if he wants to as well. So it's paid off well for Old Boy.
And this is one of the benefits that Evolution have for hiding their deck lists. From all the other teams, pretty much, we know whether or not they're running Galactic Crawlers in their Murloc Paladins. But for Zixo here, even if he had N'Zoth's first mate on turn 1, he might not feel comfortable going for it, because there could be a Galactic Crawler just to eat it up instantly. And Old Boy very possibly would have kept it in the opening hand to take out those pirates.
So finally we're potentially seeing the advantages from Evolution's strategy. But still nothing to clear up this board yet from Zixo. Of course, you can just play Acolyte of Pain, which may be able to generate 1, possibly 2 cards next turn, depending on how Old Boy wants to deal with this.
Ooh. And now for Old Boy, looking at how it works out, if he goes for the double Murloc, he can buff most of his things out of dying to the Whirlwind effect from Bloodrazor. It's basically just the chum, but he would have most of his guys left at 3 health, so it would be Zixo's choice as to which one he wants to take out with the actual swing of the weapon from the Bloodrazor.
The good thing about this play is you've then got the follow-up of Megasaur, that if Zixo does go with Bloodrazor here, then you can play the Megasaur, you can gain health, and you can get out of range of Sleep with the Fishes. But now with Brawl being picked up, that does mean Zixo will have an answer to a board that is put on by Old Boy. So maybe something like Death Rattle would be... Oh no, that would just die to Bloodrazor as well. So actually the Brawl being picked up is huge for Zixo.
So Old Boy presented with yet another choice now. He could fit down another Murloc in combination with the coin. But here I like saving back the coin to go for Spikeridge Steed to really start amping up the pressure and putting your opponent on exactly execute if they want to be coming back in this game. And here, as for the choices, he can buff up the health, but I believe most of these Murlocs would still be dying, or at least one of them would, or both of them would with the weapon and the Sleep with the Fishes, so maybe he just goes with Wind Fury and really starts putting on the pressure.
You could go Wind Fury, yeah, +1/1 isn't good enough, unfortunately. If you have any sort of guess that your opponent is using Sleep with the Fishes, then it's just not good enough.
However, maybe he expects Direhorn Hatchling or Ali Armorsmith to come down instead. There are 3 out of those 2, 3 copies altogether of those 2 cards in hand for Zixo, so it wouldn't be a ridiculous assumption whatsoever. It does end up going with the Death Rattle. It kind of works out decently well, but even so, just the Sleep with the Fishes coming down here pretty much just makes clean work. It's a bit of an awkward order, and therefore it does mean that the Gentle Megasaur will survive. Or something will survive on board here.
So Sleep with the Fishes can't be used with anything else other than Ali Armorsmith just to get something on the board. The Brawl into then using your weapon could go very similarly to using Sleep with the Fishes anyway. You could end up removing everything but the Megasaur.
Yeah.
So you are still potentially taking another 5 damage this next turn. That takes you down to 8. Is there a Blessing of Kings in your opponent's hand?
You probably wouldn't have seen it quite yet, because I think Megasaur would have been the play. But there's so much to think about here for Zixo, because he has the choice, if he's using Sleep with the Fishes, of leaving a 5/1 on the board or 4 1/1s on the board. And while the 4 1/1s is more stats that's being left on the board, the high attack of Megasaur in combination with Blessing with the Spikeridge Steed would make such clean work of the Ali Armorsmith. But in the end, he doesn't go with that at all. He's leaving the board entirely intact and wants to follow up with a Brawl or Sleep with the Fishes after, which means Old Boy can push forward such a high amount of damage.
Yeah, I can play Spikeridge Steed here. Just get through the Armorsmith comfortably with the Megasaur, and then he's pushing 6 damage towards face. I think Old Boy, we're pretty happy about that, but now that does give Zixo room to think about his options with maybe this Brawl, if you would like.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think from Zixo, the line of play I would have liked was kill off everything and just leave the Death Rattle plants on board. And then if Spikeridge Steed does come down, you can then follow up with a Brawl, which has a very high chance of leaving a 1/1 on the board. And even if you have to go for Ali Armorsmith before then, or follow up afterwards, there's not that much damage on the board to break through it. Whereas Coin of Spikeridge Steed just absolutely wrecked Zixo's play last turn.
And so Zixo can't even go for Sleep with the Fishes into Brawl and hope that then the 2/6 is all that survives. So you just sleep first. And well, you get rid of all the 1/1s and you just pray. You hope there's no extra damage from your opponent.
He's in luck at the moment, but it is so close to being over as Patches is pulled out as well. Maybe should have just fired that in.
Could have gained 1 extra armor.
Yeah. And that would have protected him against Blessing of Kings. Yeah.
Yeah, Blessing of Kings would be quite the punish at this point now. But it's not there for old boy. Does have Finger though. Finger is something that can be put onto the board that, at least in his eyes, may survive and can't be targeted. Might be something that survives a brawl.
Oh man, it's such a difficult turn for old boy. He's got... Because you don't really want to go for a Finger when there's a chance of brawl just taking out everything you're trying to do. But I think because he's got the follow-up on the next turn of Curator, he can go for the Finger here. Even if there is the brawl, he's still got the follow-up of potentially a good amount of damage on board, and he can still go for the value plan, most importantly, because he's got the follow-up of Curator.
So if you are going to go for the brawl here, you could play another Armorsmith as well to give yourself even more of a chance of your minion surviving. If one of your minions does survive, you are still looking at 2 damage from your opponent's board potentially being left on as well.
So maybe because of that, he attacks in the Patches beforehand and just says, if I am going to win this game, I have to get really, really lucky. But at the same time, increments of 2 damage aren't that common in this Paladin. It's basically just Spikeridge Deed that would do that. And so in the end, he doesn't even go for the brawl because he's not that far behind on board, and putting up the taunt here will gain him a very respectable amount of armor.
Yeah, so hitting into the Alley Armorsmith will take him back up to 8. There is then 4 available for old boy. Make that 5, make that 6, make that 7 with all the Murlocs. So actually, I believe old boy is 1 off.
Really? If he pulls War Leader out of the deck, could that push it over? If he goes for Finger into attacking one of the minions... Oh no, but he'd have to attack in with the Tidecaller first, so he can't go for War Leader lethal quite yet.
I mean, I'm going to use your words and say this is a difficult turn, because every turn has been difficult for both of these players at this point.
Yep.
Because it is one of the most frustrating situations when you are just trying to find that last little bit of damage, and you know full well at any point this Quest Warrior could suddenly take control of this matchup, start dropping taunts here, there, and everywhere, and you just cannot get that extra damage. You don't have the likes of Consecration, at least we don't think. Maybe there is a Consecration in Evolution's deck. Maybe there is something that can push that extra little bit of damage. And I like the play from old boy here by saying, yes, okay, I could be pushing all this damage into my opponent here, but if I go for the more board-effective play, I've got a lot to follow up.
Yeah, I think I like going for the aggression as well, because I was looking at maybe attacking him with the Finger and the Tidecaller into one of the minions here, trying to pull some Murlocs from the deck. Obviously, you're still very weak to Brawl, but you are kind of thinning out your deck a bit more, which gets you closer to drawing cards like Tyrion and Tarim. But because you then leave a higher chance of one of the rubbish Murlocs surviving over one of your big minions, like the Megasaur or the Curator, I think this is probably the best from Old Boy, because it also gets in that little bit of extra face damage.
And Zigzag can have a little bit of fun here as well. I say fun. Risks aren't really fun. Unless you see like roller coasters as a risk, I guess that's a bit of a thrill. But instead, he's going to do the same he's been doing over the last couple of turns, and he's just putting a blockade in the way and hoping and praying. He can get rid of the Tidecaller. Sorry, can't get rid of the Tidecaller, which is the scary thing, because now this Tidecaller can get very large. He's got a Spellbreaker there as well.
Oh, and with that has to be lethal with all the Megasaur stuff that can go on. You can play the Megasaur, the Spellbreaker, 2 Murlocs as well to buff it up yet further. If he can get plus attack, Wind Fury, he doesn't find any aggressive option.
Oh my goodness. Was there an option of just playing 3 Murlocs there with the Spellbreaker? I can't even see how much damage is on the board at the moment because of the Discover effect.
14 health. Obviously, once he silences, he can just fire off everything to face, so no armor would be gained by the Armorsmiths. I think he would have countered that up beforehand. I very much hope he would have at least, but I get the suspicion that it probably wasn't quite there. 6, he would have... Oh, no, wait. 6 damage. I think he could have won the game.
So if you Spellbreaker first,
Yep.
you've got 6, 8, 10 on board already. You then play 4 Murlocs, but you don't have space for them 4 Murlocs, right?
Oh, right, okay. Okay,
so
sorry,
you can only
that's the
get up
thing.
to 13.
Right. But still very, very close indeed. And this line of play doesn't really protect you against Brawl that much. But the thing is, with only one card in hand for Zixo, he basically has to get a powerful card to play in combination with the Brawl. And even then, you've got such powerful follow-up with Scalebane, Hero Power, Valfin, Hero Power. The value is still just on Old Boy's side.
I guess a Blood Razor is pretty powerful. The Battle Cry does help you gain a considerable amount of armor here. And that's extra power as well to maybe deal with something that survives. So you can get 8, 9, 10, 11 armor this turn.
Wow.
Well, you get, 7 armor that takes you to 11 health, should I say. But Old Boy just trying his best, just trying to get over that finish line. And Zixo just keeps putting up these walls. And Zixo's been going for some risky plays, just putting up those taunts and hoping his opponent doesn't have the damage.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of risky because, as you said, if there is that extra damage, Old Boy would have just won. But at the same time, he would have been taking a bigger risk by playing Brawl, because if one of his opponent's minions survives, he just loses on the spot.
You gain even more damage as well, because there's double Armor Smith on the board. So I think it might be closer to 11 after all.
Wow.
Yeah, 12. And you hope for the best.
Even if one of his opponent's minions survives, Zixo is not quite dead yet. He will be in a pretty dire situation indeed. But with the hatchling surviving, he's finally, for the first time in ages, ahead on board.
He is, but now he's run out of cards as well.
Yep.
And Old Boy has very obviously been playing around Brawl by keeping as much back as possible, by saying, right, if he does pull the trigger, if he does able to win and Brawl, at least I can reload with all these Murlocs onto the board and hopefully have the potential to push damage.
Wow, okay, and a very interesting play here for Old Boy as well. To be honest, I was looking at pick the Redemption or the Getaway Kodo and just play the Scalebane. But instead going for the Noble Sacrifice does pull away one of the hits in terms of either the Blood Razor or the Hatchling, but I feel like it might have been better go for a slightly higher value play.
Tarlord is so much of a brick wall in the way of Old Boy. That is absolutely insane. The value Zixo's just found from that turn is unreal.
But Zixo is still playing the game of just hoping. If Tarim is picked up for Old Boy, that makes such quick work of the Tarlord. If Tyrion is picked up, Spike Ridge Seed, Bone Mare, there's so many strong options here for Old Boy, assuming they are in the deck, of course.
Old Boy can get rid of the 5-1 chump and just play this Tarlord, and Old Boy is now looking for answers of his own.
At the same time, though, while this Tarlord is a great big brick wall, the Scalebane can just stay there, keep on giving buff effects to everything, because the Tarlord is not going to be trading into anything effective at all.
The gift that just keeps giving. Scalebane. Darrell Brown, 2017.
This Christmas, show someone you love that you care with Scalebane.
Scalebane gifts of plus damage every turn. But now he has the War Leaders as well, so Old Boy could, if he would like, put a few Murlocs on the board here, and then keep this War Leader back as a little bit of a surprise attack onto Zixo's Tarlord. A card that very rarely sees play, but in certain situations it is very powerful.
So Old Boy going pretty wide here on the board. He obviously didn't want to go for the hero power beforehand because he wanted to get everything in, and he didn't want the buff to fall on one of the 1/1s, but he's playing out all of his hand here, just going all in on being able to break through the Tarlord on one of the following turns, leaving himself very vulnerable to something like a Drake off the top. And in combination with the Whirlwind effect from the weapon, this is an unbelievable board clear for Zixo. He can get rid of almost everything.
Did he need to play the War Leader there, Old Boy?
I think it might have been an overcommittal. He could have played the value game very effectively. So much of his deck is a good card at this point.
And now with the Drake on the board, 6 out of 7 on the quest as well. You're back up to, what, 11 health? This might just be it for Zixo. He might have found his way. He survived for so long. He was so brave with a lot of his plays, with the hatchling just going onto the board, hoping his opponent, and oh boy, I think one off lethal twice this game.
Yep. He was unbelievably close, and maybe on one of those turns there was a way he could have killed off his own minions, something like that. But now that the hero power is activated, Old Boy just gives it up. He knows it's over. Zixo taking an unbelievable game just by the skin of his teeth, coming out on top, showing why he is the absolute taunt warrior god of this tournament.
Huge, huge game for Zixo, and quite rightly, he looked back to his teammates, gave a fist bump as well, because he knew how well he played that game. He calculated his risks perfectly, and Old Boy just could not find that damage, and Planet Odd find themselves 2-1 up in this do or die matchup, and it is now just going to be down to Frozen on the side of Evolution to try and bring this back and hope that they can stay in the competition, because if he loses, they will be heading home.
So we've now seen 6 of the 9 classes, I believe, from Evolution. One of the ones we know has been banned in the Druid, so the only ones that we haven't now seen are the Hunter and the Priest, I believe, and one more which I'm trying to figure out quickly as I try to remember all the classes. But the options available to them for counter are quite limited, actually.
So we might have to go for something just a little bit more familiar for Evolution here. I mean, we've seen them do work with the Shaman.
Yep.
We've seen them do work with Le Rogue.
I think Le Rogue might be a good bet.
Might have to be the choice. And, oh, baby. Okay, something a little bit different. Mage, we have seen it once already. Some questionability about the game that was played previously with this Mage. There was a lot of discussion from both pro players and viewers and casters about what were the right plays, what were the wrong plays. I think there was a volcanic potion at one point that could have been played from Frozen. So maybe lesson learnt, and maybe this is the chance to redeem yourself. If you can pick up 2 victories and you can carry your team through to the next stage of the losers bracket, then I think everyone would forget about that previous game.
Yeah, I think it was more difference in play styles than technical mistakes from Frozen in the previous series, so I'm not going to presume to say the lines I was suggesting were better, just there was a lot of options in the game, all of which had benefits. But for this particular matchup for Frozen, it's almost easier in terms of what he's looking for at the start of the game, because against the aggressive decks there's a lot of cards in certain combinations that you're looking for, like Secrets with Valet, Volcanic Potion with some kind of spell damage move from Thalnos if that's in there, but against Control you're basically looking for draw, and Frostlich Jaina, Medivh and Alexstrasza are the real MVPs. So even though that's a 9 mana card and an 8 mana card for Frozen, don't get it wrong, this is a great starting hand.
Yep, you've got the time, I guess. Your only fear is if your opponent can complete that quest very early and start raining down fireballs, then it does get a little bit scary. We have only seen 18 cards of this Mage deck so far, but from those 18 you can kind of presume what everything else is going to be. There might be a few tech cards in there, might be something like a Spellbreaker or something just to surprise your opponent. But the Spellbreaker wasn't able to get the job done, and we've seen Zixo go for a couple of turn 2 Dirty Rats, but I don't think he's going to be going for it this time.
Oh, it could be so juicy. All the big minions that your opponent is going to be playing are mainly played for the Battle Cry. Alexstrasza and Medivh, Antonidas probably not in the deck, are basically just played because they're able to give you a big board or just kill your opponent over 2 turns. So even though you're getting a huge amount of stats on board for your opponent, it wouldn't even be that bad for Zixo if he had pulled out one of the 8 or 9 drops.
Finally, Frozen finds some of that early game, so we now know Mana Worms are in this deck as well. We didn't know that previously, but you can make that assumption. You've got Mana Worm into Frostbolt if you wanted to just buff him up this turn, maybe put some damage into the Tar Creeper. Of course, you can keep that Frostbolt back for a little bit if you would like, because on board, the Mana Worm's still alive.
Yeah, and from Frozen here, I actually quite like saving back all the burn he possibly can for the moment. I think, although he doesn't have Alexstrasza quite yet, it's only 2 damage on board at the moment. He really doesn't need to care. And throughout the course of the game, he's probably not going to be getting in that much minion combat anyway, until the really big minion turns start coming down with things like Medivh into Fireland's Portal. So saving it back here, saving the Frostbolt and Fireballs to go face would definitely be the play I'm looking at.
And of course, historically, when we look back through Hearthstone history, kind of Freeze Mage versus Control Warrior would always get themselves out of range of a Freeze Mage, but now with the likes of Medivh, the likes of Frostlich Jaina being added, you have that late game value. But now with the quest as well from Zixo here, he's also got that late game value as well. But I suppose Frozen is going to hope that he can put himself in a position where he can be generating elemental after elemental that may be taking this 8 damage every turn.
It's very true, and Frozen here kind of getting a bit scared actually, going for the Frostbolt on one of the minions. He doesn't necessarily need to keep every point of burn to go for face, especially as he already has a respectable amount of it. But even here, I think this play is debatable. You could have just saved back the Frostbolt, maybe have even gone with Polymorph, although that's probably a bit overkill. You want to save that for Ali Armorsmith to try and deny the armor gain. But it's an important card in this matchup, as being able to go for 15 damage in one turn with Fireball, Frostbolt is very valuable.
And a very simple game plan for Zixo at the moment is actually one of the more straightforward games for him, certainly in the early stages of I'm just going to have free roam to put taunts on the board and tick up this quest counter, because my opponents can have very little to do about it. Very little early game to answer it, as the first Meteor is used. A shake of the head as well there from Zixo. I was wondering whether shake of the head was at his own positioning or whether he was just annoyed that Frozen had it in his hand.
Yeah, what was killed off? It was just a Tar Creeper as well, which I guess it's fine. It's not too bad either way, as the amount of damage you're getting in is a bit higher if you leave the 2-1 alive. But as you're saying, in terms of the strategy here for Zixo, as counterplay for all of Frozen's strategies, obviously for burn damage he just wants to gain as much armor as possible, but as counterplay for Medivh, he just wants to complete the quest as quickly as he possibly can, because if he can get it done by turn 9, he can just not play minions for the rest of the game. He has to play 7 taunt cards to be able to complete the quest, but then after that, you can kind of just take it easy, make it so that the water elementals are just not being generated by Frostlich Jaina, and Frozen's game plan might just fall flat on its face.
Does have Mana Worm into Blizzard here if he would like, just to try and get something onto the board. And of course it just puts a halt into Zixo's plan of pushing any damage nice and early as well. So we're now going to get into the serious turns for Frozen. Medivh coming down on 8 potentially. Frostlich Jaina on 9. That's the value cards you've been looking for.
And for Zixo here, he's really looking to go for the Dirty Rat so he can complete the quest on the following turn. But I guess at the same time, if he goes for Drake on 8, he can go Rat, equip Sulfuras Hero Power on 9, still can get the Hero Powers going in the same relative time frame. And he could pull out some very powerful options here in Medivh. As he goes for it, that will be Medivh pulled from Frozen's hand. It's a big development onto the board for Frozen, but now the board development game plan for Frozen, ironically, is kind of over.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good Dirty Rat. I mean, at first glimpse, you're like, ugh, that's horrid. But no, now we're not going to see one of those big wide boards being able to be built up by Frozen, and that essentially saves Zixo a brawl as well. It keeps another brawl back for any scary shenanigans that could happen a little bit later on.
That's a good point. As now, I guess Frozen for the moment, okay, I shouldn't say too preemptively that the board control plan is over. It's not for the moment, because Zixo is kind of low on cards, he hasn't completed the quest, so even just Firelands Portals to take out minions in combination with the Frostlich Jaina could maybe get the job done for the moment and allow you to get in some respectable chip damage. But now that the Medivh has been pulled, the board control plan is severely hampered from Frozen at least.
Yeah, in terms of value of actually what's in the hand, Frozen is currently leading. It's going to be that hero power from Zixo that's really going to make the difference. And if he was to find something like a Curator, then suddenly that's going to be game on and he will take quite a significant lead, I feel. But he's going to have to play this game of, when Frostlich Jaina does come up, he needs to try and leave as little with 1 health as possible.
That's right.
Not allow these elementals to be put onto the board, because they can really put a block in his plan of sending all that damage towards face.
Lovely play here as well from Zixo of getting the double draw from the Acolyte. Doesn't care about killing it off, because he can, you know, still get the Rusty Hook down with the N'Zoth's first mate and make sure he can't give his opponent really nice value trades, even with the damaged Medivh onto his Drake.
By playing the N'Zoth's first mate, that does mean, though, that Frozen, in theory, can get another elemental next turn if Zixo, of course, wasn't to trade in, but you'd imagine that because of that, he will be trading and getting rid of it off the board. Can complete the quest this turn as well.
He can indeed. Unfortunately, 1 mana off being able to equip the Sulfuras and go for an attack to take out the elemental. But after that, I think he's probably just going to be playing as few minions as possible each turn. Obviously, there's the threat of just leaving 1 health minions as the main thing, but with things like Firelands Portal, Fireball, Polymorph, Frostbolt, Medivh's Valet, Meteor, there's such a good way there's such a good chance that Frozen has of generating more water elementals and taking this into the later stages of the game.
So quest completed on turn 9, that's certainly not too bad. It could have been a little bit earlier if he had found maybe something like a Stonehill Defender, for example. That might be able to help out, but I think he'll be more than happy with having Sulfuras ready and at the go now.
And so Frozen, I guess with his game plan here, just clearly indicating he's going for water elementals to take this game. It's pretty weak to the Warriors' hero power once it gets the Sulfuras down, to be honest, because Brawls all of a sudden will take out everything that comes down as one is picked up off the top, and then outside of that, the Fireballs will very quickly just start to clear off every elemental that comes down or just deal the damage to the opposing hero. So maybe here for Frozen, it's all in on finding Alex Straza now and trying to go for Burn to close it out, because I think if Zixo plays this correctly, he can pretty strongly shut down the Frostlit Jaina win condition.
Yeah, because you can just make sure that there's no possibility of water elementals coming onto the board at all.
Exactly.
You're not going to be putting minions down yourself, potentially, so you're not going to be offering up that ping for your opponent, but by playing the Armor Smith, you are giving the opportunity for your opponent to get another water elemental here.
Yeah. He obviously could have gone for the Brawl there, but I don't think it's that bad at the moment, because, yeah, you're giving your opponent the chance for another elemental, but then you can just Brawl that afterwards and keep getting those hero powers going to face. The healing for the mage doesn't matter at all to Zixo, so it's really just about making sure he himself isn't put into burn range, which, now that the majority of burn has come down from Frozen, he should feel relatively safe.
I guess the scary factor is, what if your hero power keeps hitting face for your opponent and then they're just suddenly healing up, even if it's just for 3 every turn. The 5 damage to face might not be enough to get you over the line. He's going for the Brawl first before playing a minion. And fortunately for him, it is the 1 minion that actually dies to Sleep with the Fishes and Ravaging Ghoul as well. So if there was over the next couple of turns, if that minion does become a nuisance, you are going to have a way to deal with it.
Yeah, love going for the hero power now, though. As you said, if a couple of other smaller minions come down, like Valet, Archaeologist, things like that, then you can get rid of them with the Ravaging Ghoul and Sleep with the Fishes. But for the moment, that constant freeze is actually still really annoying for Zixo.
So you can start with the hero power here if you would like and hope for the 3/6. You can give yourself better opportunity by going Ravaging Ghoul into Sleep with the Fishes, then into the hero power, and then you're potentially clearing everything off the board. You are leaving yourself open though. If you leave any minion on the board, so a Ravaging Ghoul, you're leaving yourself open to potentially another water elemental being put onto the board, because for we can see something like a Blizzard into Ping, that is then putting another one on the board.
So going with clearing off what he can now is Zixo. It's interesting lines of play he's gone for, in that because he didn't go for the Brawl early on, the earlier Armor Smith was hit with a Polymorph. He's taken a very high amount of damage now, so he does just end up having to go for this very defensive line of play. And with no armor gain in hand, this could actually just be coming towards lethal for Frozen somehow.
Yeah, Frozen finds the second Fireball. I mean, he is just there at this point. Hero power goes face again as well, and Zixo is not going to be particularly happy about that, because he has to take 3 here if he wants to remove this minion off the board, and that puts him down to 6. And that does definitely put himself into just a Fireball range. And this is where we're going to see what cards we've got hiding in Frozen's deck. Is there something like a Pyroblast, for example? Any sort of burn? It's not there just yet.
That's not bad. Even just a Medivh's Valet, though, in this scenario would have just about closed out the game. So still some very strong options available to Frozen as he does go for the Flame Strike. We could have seen perhaps just saving it back here because it does still give some armor gain to Zixo, but it's still just on the tip of Frozen's tongue, the ability to just deliver lethal.
Look how close Zixo's getting as well now. Frozen down just to 8 here, so he needs to be putting something on the board as well as freezing if he doesn't find a fireball of his own here. Finds Alex Straza.
Wow. So we can go for Ice Block, Ping to face, maybe I guess with the Ice Barrier as well, yeah. And then all of a sudden, Medivh's Valet off the top will just close out the game.
So he's got another Ice Block in hand as well. That gives him another turn, another ping, so that he can get him down to at least 2. Can't quite win this game just from pings.
So Zixo, yep, correctly starting off with the hero power so as not to activate the Ice Barrier. I guess from Frozen, he could have considered saving back the barrier, because then if he does pick up Valet the turn later, he can still end up winning the game, but he picks it up off the top, closes it out, bringing this game to 2 games each in a fantastically played series from Frozen.
Yeah, really well played from Frozen there, and a big sigh of relief from him as well, as Evolution still alive and kicking in this tournament, and we're going to a Game 5. What a perfect way to end today, and a perfect way to lead us into tomorrow's last 4 games. Of course, we're going to have the live finals here, so if you are watching, if you're a Chinese viewer, you can finally come into the Water Cube and view from the massive stage that we have here in Beijing. And it's going to be a very exciting couple of days.
It is indeed some fantastic players, an awesome event. The stage is obviously indescribable, although I'll describe it as fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. It's a decent word.
Guess it is describable then.
Yeah, it's slightly describable. It is an absolutely monstrous stage, by the way. I've been to many an esports event, and it's one of the best stages I have ever witnessed. So you definitely want to be looking at that one. But now, Hoi will be going up against Frozen here, and what a series we have on our hands. And okay, so how do you answer this mage then, Darrell? Because this is something that we haven't seen Planet Hod have to deal with.
I'm looking at it and I'm kind of strapped for answers. I haven't played against too much of this kind of Frostlich Jaina mage. Maybe the Quest mage can get it done, but then obviously there's the ice blocks putting a real damper to your game plan. Maybe the Hunter with its extremely powerful hero power against the mage could put forward enough aggression, but it is going to be Hoi on his almost signature at this point Murloc Paladin, still running the Consecration, which was so potent in Hoi Paladin, which he won Spring HCT Championships with back in the day. So he's giving himself a great shot of taking this down, but it is going to have to be absolutely tip-top play, as we can already see some very powerful anti-aggro cards available in this mage deck for Frozen.
That Consecration might just be that one card that he needs just to get that final little bit of damage. That has been what the Murloc Paladins have lacked so far this tournament, is just being able to get through that final bit when there's taunts in the way, when there's ice blocks that you can't pop, for example. So we're in for an exciting one, and this time Frozen does find some of his early game, finds that Mana Worm, which can be so important against a deck that is going to be providing so much pressure against you.
Yeah, really great way to get things going, even following up with the Arcanologist, a blistering start for Frozen, which should be able to shut down the vast majority of minions that Hoi can throw down in the early turns, as I expect a full mulligan here from Hoi.
Yeah, you don't want to be keeping any of this. You want to be I mean, there is debate for keeping a Hydrologist, perhaps. If you are really worried about not drawing anything, just keeping a 2-drop at least is something that you're going to be able to play on your first turn, but definitely debate of just saying we want to go for those early Murlocs. That's the way we're going to win this game. If we're too slow, we're just going to be falling to the, wow, crazy amount of control that this mage can actually offer.
Yeah. And while obviously the Hydrologist can be the real MVP in this matchup when taking eye for an eye in particular, it's, you know, you need to be able to get in that aggression in the early turns. You need to get your opponent down to 1 health beforehand before it's even worth going for, as Hoi picks up a very respectable hand to get things going.
Yeah, Rallying Blade is going to be a nice answer to the Mana Worm eventually. I mean, you could be patient here and actually not play anything and then just coin out the Rallying Blade next turn if you've watched that last match and you're saying, well, my opponent doesn't have too much early game, but with the Arcanologist in hand from Frozen as well, maybe that'll be a little bit of a punish if you do go very passive.
We have seen from Hoy, though, he has the ability to switch on a dime with his Murloc Paladin game plan. He can go very aggressive. You know, we've seen him coin into the most ridiculously powerful Murloc starts possible, but we've also seen him eking out good amounts of power with the hero power. Taking things slow, trying to get value with the Rallying Blade is something I could very much expect from Hoy, but because basically only Frostbolt will be able to take this out in the early turns, and even then Rallying Blade would still be good, I like this from Hoy.
Speak of the devil.
Hey, what do you know?
There is a Frostbolt that's available, and I mean, this is the perfect start for something like a Tempo Mage, of course, just being able to buff up your Mana Worm, push the damage, and clear off your opponent's board. You still think this is worth it in Control Mage as well, or is the Archaeologist just a little bit better? I guess it's how scared you are of Rockpool Hunter?
Yep. Basically, we saw a full mulligan as well from Hoy, so the chances of having Rockpool Hunter, which definitely would have been kept off the mulligan, is not too high, but Frozen clearly is afraid, as he just lets rip here. This does mean that on the following turn, the Primordial Glyph becomes quite a lot better, actually, because even though you're playing it off curve, then any secret you find can be played on the same turn. The Mana Worm goes up to 4 attack, and it's all of a sudden a real powerhouse. But for Hoy, obviously, I'm expecting coin into Rallying Blade.
Yeah, it deals with the Mana Worm so well. It also deals with another minion that might come the following turn, and then you can start having that comfort of being able to put things on the board that aren't contested. I mean, even though in the previous game where Zixo was able to put all those taunts on the board uncontested early on, Frozen still found the answers. He still found that damage and the lethal from just Frostlich's Jaina pressure.
So Frozen throwing down the Archaeologist here as lamb to the slaughter of Hoy's weapon, and he can follow up with a pretty respectable turn now as he gets potentially the buff from Grimscale Chum onto the Rockpool Hunter, and then buffing it up again at the same time. Really powerful turn available here for Hoy. Doesn't quite land the buff, but even so, he's put himself ahead, which is of crucial importance at this point.
Yeah, he needs to start putting some damage into Frozen and starting to basically just cement who's boss in this game, actually. Not allow Frozen to get away from things, but Frozen's been giving free roam to just look for a couple of spells here, look for something that might be influential. Arcane Intellect, of course, can help him draw some cards. I think that's probably going to be the choice. Frozen Clone.
Arcane Intellect is undeniably the best card here, but the thing is, it's quite slow, and because you don't actually have a way to catch up on board on next turn, it's going to be 2 turns from here with the Blizzard. If something like a Gentle Megasaur or the War Leader that we see in hand for Hoy were to come down, Frozen is taking a huge amount of damage.
He is, but I guess he's got Ice Barrier in hand. He's got now double Blizzard. Medivh's Valet does work pretty well with one of those secrets next turn as well. But you're completely right, this is a lot of damage that's going to be available for Hoy now. And Hoy has been very patient throughout the entire of this tournament. Even on the simplest of plays, he will take his time. He doesn't rope every turn, but he will take at least 30 seconds just to think about his play, in case there is any alternatives that he feels is stronger. And with the Stonehill Defender at least offering an alternative, he had to at least think about it. It's
worth considering, but here considering the War Leader is even buffed up, it's even more reason to go for it, because it can't even be taken out by Frostbolt or Secret into Medivh's Valet, so it's very survivable. It would have to be something like Frostbolt, Ping, or Fireball to take it out at all, which means Frozen is going to have to be looking at other lines of play, perhaps taking out one of the smaller Murlocs, thus allowing Hoy to keep a resilient board as he gets ever closer to that ominous Bone Mare.
So there will still be 9 available for Hoy if Frozen does just go down, probably Ice Barrier into Medivh's Valet here. Well, I guess 8 if you take out the 5-2 instead. Naturally, when I see 3 damage, I want to send it towards the 3 damage minion. Mainly because you've got Blizzard next turn, and the Blizzard so easily sweeps up the 5-2. But every point of damage does matter.
Yeah, I like this from Frozen because he's very much looking towards going for Blizzard into Flame Strike or double Blizzard over the next couple of turns. 2 versus 3 health is a lot less important than 5 versus 4 attack. So taking great care of his health total with this line of play, as this is really not actually slowing down that much at all for Hoy. Obviously the Stonehill is very weak in terms of stats for the mana cost, but just because it leaves something on board for Spike Ridge, which leaves something on board for Bone Mare, which means even if everything's cleared up, you can still go for Tyrion on the following turn. It's a crazy amount of aggression, even through double Blizzard Flame Strike.
So Hoy probably considering whether it's worth actually just trading off this Medivh's Valet at this point. I imagine you're going to start this turn with your Stonehill Defender and just look for something else. Of course, you're not looking for something to play this turn, so it doesn't matter if you hero power first or second at this point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe should have done because there's a chance he takes a 2-drop. I'm trying to think of which ones he would have done. Maybe Dirty Rat, I don't know. But yeah, this is fine as he snap picks Tyrion, a fantastic card to get off of the Stonehill because of the fact that it allows you more repetitive damage with the Ashbringer once it comes down. Even if it's cleared off with something like a Doomsayer, it's going to have to be freeze effects to the face from Frozen to stop the damage coming in from Hoy, which is basically done now. There's only one Frostbolt left in the deck.
Polymorph would have been very influential, might have been able to take out a Tyrion, but now the fact there's two Tyrions, that makes that Polymorph a little bit more redundant. So Blizzard into potentially another Blizzard, potentially into a Flame Strike, hope for maybe Frostlich Jaina to start putting some water elementals on the board. Not flame elementals, that is completely counterproductive to what you want to do. Makes the board far too warm.
You might turn into steamy or tea elementals.
Tea elementals?
Yeah, with like hot water.
That sounds good.
That does sound
I know
good.
we're in China, but whew, I'd go for a good tea elemental right now.
Yeah, I think for Hoy, he's just going to be keeping up with the go-to game plan here, going for Spike Ridge Steed. You can't match.
You're right.
Yeah, no, I'm just, now that I look at it, the fact that the ping, or it stops it from Blizzard, Tarim actually isn't that bad at all here.
I like being so aggressive with Tarim, but a defensive option sometimes is the best option as well.
Yep.
You've seen one Blizzard already, so are you realistically scared of another Blizzard? The likelihood in their top 12 cards. Alternatively, if you do play a Tarim, it does open yourself up to, what, a Flame Strike, but the Tarim survives.
Yep. So you still have a target for Bone Mare. And if something were to come down, like, say you go for Spike Ridge Steed and a Polymorph comes down, then it could be Polymorph ping, everything is gone from the board. So maybe Tarim actually gives you the highest chance of having something on board for the Bone Mare.
But are you happy if they Polymorph a Spike Ridge Steed when you've got
That's
two
true.
Tyrions
That's
in your
true.
hand? I think you are. I think you're saying, alright, go on then, I'll offer you up a bit of bait here. Please take it. But Frozen doesn't even have the fishing rod at this point. Instead, just a Firelands portal.
That would probably catch you a couple fish, though.
Yeah, I reckon so. Just like a and all the fish just blurt out of the water.
Like
and
Belleville
you
Rendezvous.
just catch one in your mouth. There's dinner for the night.
That's not really what you do when you go fishing.
No.
You don't drop it from the rod into your mouth.
No?
No.
I've never been. I wouldn't know.
Please see a doctor if you've been doing that.
You can eat raw fish, can't you? It's sushi.
Yeah, but not like from the ocean,
Oh.
like directly into your mouth. It's like
Okay.
covered in salt water and metals, probably.
I'd eat murlocs. They taste good. So Bone Mare now can be put onto the board by Hoyt. He can get that value off of it if he would like. He can put it onto the Stegodon. He can then trade as well and still send 4 damage to face. May not even want to trade though at this point.
I'm just trying to. It's Hoy should be thinking about what the punishes are at this point. If he goes for Bone Mare to face, or Bone Mare the thing, throw everything to face, and then Blizzard or Frostnova in combination with Doomsayer comes down, which, to be fair, we haven't actually seen yet from Frozen, I don't believe.
Nope.
Then all of a sudden, yeah, he can just throw away one of the Tyrions in and start swinging away with the weapon, which isn't bad, but he's still kind of vulnerable. But the thing is, if Doomsayer does come down with a freeze effect, then the 5/6 gets blown up anyway, so he probably should just throw everything to face him. Yeah. I love it.
Frozen chunked down to just 11 at this point, and he still hasn't found those late game options that he needs. He's not found his Alexstrasza, not found his Medivh, not found his Frostlich Jaina, and 11 health on just turn 8 as well.
And even if you're just ignoring what's on board, in terms of cards in hand available for Hoy, it really could not be better. I stand corrected.
You take that back.
Yeah, I take it back. It could be better. You could have a Bone Met thrown in there as well.
Could a little bit better, I must add. But a double Tyrion now. That gives you the potential of pushing so much damage across turns, even if Frostlich Jaina is put onto the board, even if she does become your hero. Those water elementals, you can just... I don't know, as long as you've got something on the board that can deal with them and they can't freeze your face, the health gain isn't going to matter.
Yeah, if you go for Tyrion here and Frostlich Jaina does come down, there's not quite enough board clear to even pull it back, so it would just be lethal, I believe, on the following turn. If not, a huge amount of pressure, which means Ashbringer would all but close out the game, or Bone Marrow on the following turn would do that anyway. So I think from Hoy here, again, he's taking his time, but Tyrion just feels like the best option on 8 no matter what. You don't want to be going for the Tarim quite yet here. He goes for it in the end, but again, it's worth thinking about every possible eventuality. Maybe to protect himself against a Flame Strike, he goes for the Bone Mare. Stuff like that.
And he puts down the Tyrion as well that was made from the Stonehill Defender, as Frozen winces a little bit and says, ugh, anything but Tyrion would have been good off that Stonehill Defender.
Yeah.
Some of the burn is found for Frozen, but I think the burn option might be out the window. He's not had the chance to get Alexstrasza down whilst an Ice Block's been in play either. He's going to get popped if he does play an Ice Block this turn.
Yeah. He's got a good amount of mana outside of the Ice Block, I suppose, so he could go for something like Ice Block, Hero Power, Fireball, take out the Tyrion, maybe damage some of the other minions at least. But yeah, even then, that's just not getting the job done, so he clears up what he can, getting a complete board clear, I suppose. But the follow-up from Hoy is just ridiculous, and there's still none of the power cards available for Frozen of Frostlich Jaina or Alexstrasza.
Could just drop Finger here if you wanted to. You could send 5 to face, drop Finger, that's the Bone Mare target.
It's true. This is true.
Pavel just entered the room. What? Hold on.
Alright, mate. Get out of here.
Pavel might be entering this room at some point, because Evolution backs against the wall at this point.
It's looking more and more like Planet Odd are going to be advancing. The Tyrion, you know, it's a good point you raise. Maybe the Finger should come down. It's vulnerable to a second Flame Strike, but to be honest, I doubt that's in the deck. 2 Flame Strikes seems to be a bit overkill at the moment, especially when you're running freeze effects like Blizzard. Yeah, I would just throw down the Tyrion here, but it's worth considering that the weapon might be overwritten, and you just want to make sure you have the ability to kill your opponent through either Alexstrasza or Frostlich Jaina on the following turn. And I think Tyrion, in combination with the Grimscale Chum, does allow that with the Bone Mare.
There's so much power you're putting onto the board as well, and potentially, well, almost guaranteeing another Meteor from your opponent, another Ice Block from your opponent, sorry, and Meteor comes off the top.
Possibly a Meteor, yep. Well, if we see Ping Meteor here, that is all the mana used up outside of a Frostbolt, which actually probably will be thrown towards the face. Okay, well, Frozen's still not dead, and that was a very valuable resource used up for Hoy. So it's starting to look like possibly something could turn around here for Frozen, but he's going to have to find some kind of a heal effect, because on the following turn, if he plays Finger now, buffs it up with the Bone Mare on the following turn, that's yet another ability for Hoy to deliver lethal, or at the very least pop the Ice Block.
Hoy now down to 21. Frozen has 2 Ice Blocks to work with, used already 1 Fireball, both Frostbolts, so
True.
burn plan slightly out of the window.
It's definitely limited, especially because at some point the Hydrologist for the Eye for an Eye could come down and deliver 100% lethal even through an Ice Block outside, I suppose, possibilities of Frostlich Jaina, but it delivers such strong chances for Hoy to take the game no matter what.
Well, the only draw of the tournament we did see when Hoy was playing with
true.
Paladin against a Burn Mage, but I think Hoy is very much in the driving seat in this scenario. It looks like Frozen is but a mere passenger at this point and just has to hope for the best.
even that's just not quite getting the job done. So I think this is guaranteed to be an Ice Block pop on the following turn, unless Frost Nova can be found off of the Arcane Intellect, which Frozen is starting for. He's digging for those power cards, which I think is worth going for.
Well, there's one of them. Medivh was a power card if he was able to get it on the board earlier on when there wasn't block poppable things on the board. Instead, now this Medivh becomes relatively useless and probably won't even be making its way onto the board at all. Instead, it's just going to be stall with his ice blocks and praying for a miracle, but I think even the miracle of a Frostlit Jaina isn't going to be enough at this point, Darok. As slowly but surely Planet Odd are edging their way to the next round of the losers bracket. And we may be saying goodbye to Team Evolution, the team that absolutely smashed the group stages. They were 4-0, they were cruising, they put their feet up, they said actually we're not going to reveal any decks, we'll just give away some wins, don't matter too much does it, we'll just play the 3 decks we've played, if we lose we lose, we're going through to the winners bracket anyway. They then fall in the winners bracket, they then fall into the losers bracket, and now they are so close to being eliminated from the competition.
They are indeed. Pavel is going to be devastated at this point. He has had such a ridiculous win rate if this does go to a loss. He won his first game with Zoo today as well, so he kind of did his job. Although I suppose for Pavel, getting his job done should be a 3-0 sweep. He's been doing so well this tournament.
So if there is a Pyroblast in the deck from Frozen, there may be. We haven't seen every single card.
It's true. Or off a glyph.
Or off a glyph. There is a possibility of going Ice Block into Ping into Fireball, setting your opponent down to 10, and then praying.
This is a great spot from Frozen, and a great spot from you, may I add, Dan.
You know, sometimes I'm not just a pretty face. Actually, most
Usually
of the time,
you're not that either.
Yeah, I'm not even that either. Damn it.
Mate. But this is, you're right, this is the out for Frozen. If he can get either, yeah, as you were saying, a Pyroblast, or I'm thinking if he can get Fireland's Portal, or like Frostbolt, Medivh's Valet, if he can get enough burn damage off the next 2 draws, maybe he stands a chance. But I think it is going to be all in on either the off chance that he's including Pyroblast, although I doubt it, or getting the Primordial Glyph into that Pyroblast to close out a win.
Well, we found the chance for Frozen, and at least he does have draws to find it as well, and I imagine it's probably the line he's going to go down here as well. Just send as much damage as face as possible this turn, and then you have, what, a 1 in 9, so one of those cards. Actually, both? Has he even drawn a Primordial Glyph yet? Have we even seen one?
I think you saw one for an Arcane Intellect earlier on.
Yes, we did. So one of those 9 cards could be a Primordial Glyph, which could find him a Pyroblast, or one of them could be a Pyroblast. If it's in the list, we don't actually know.
And even here, Hoy can find the Hydrologist off of this Curator and get himself Eye for an Eye, which closes out that game plan completely as he finds it.
Frozen already praying because he knows his outs, but there's the
Eye for an Eye. Oh my god.
And that'll be enough for Hoy to make sure that Planet Odd do win this game, even if there is a Pyroblast. Actually, no, it would be, what, a draw if he finds a Pyroblast at this point? And the rules are very different because previously both players take a loss, but Alexstrasza being found anyway doesn't even matter. Planet Odd move through to the last 4 of the competition. Evolution are eliminated despite their early dominance. And what a performance that was from Planet Odd.
And it was, you're absolutely right, from Zixo at the start. I loved his Quest Warrior play at the start of that fantastic dominance in those games, and even from their opponents, from Frozen there. He looked like he was in a really good spot, taking 2 series in a row. Had a fantastic opening hand. I think he navigated both matchups incredibly well after taking out Zixo and almost getting Hoy down as well. But as Zixo corrals his lambs as if he were a shepherd.
As they almost fall over each other